Tallboys and Trackmasters is brought to you by Expert Exhaust. Expect more for your money. MTB Shock Dock, your choice for suspension needs. High Gear Success. From helping racers get sponsored to motorsports event operation and promotion, shift your passion into high gear. Miracle Works Detailing. No cars too dirty. And by Cycle Mart, your motorcycle parts store.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to episode 73 of Tallboys
and Trackmasters.
Woo. Liquid gold. Well, we hope you all had a happy Turkey Day. Thanksgiving was this past week. Trevor, do anything good for Thanksgiving?
Just the usual dinner with the family. No luck for deer season this year, unfortunately.
Just killed some buzzes and some 30 packs, right?
I just hung out in the woods for a few days.
Nothing wrong with that, buddy.
Yeah,
that's always a good time. I miss it myself. So
yeah.
Well, you know, we're back. It's episode 73, and we got another great interview lined up. And I just wanted to say that, you know, whenever we reach out to people and we talk to different people that we know or people that we don't even know and try to build a relationship with, we try to find common ground between us and the people that we talk to.
Yep.
So it could be a lot of things. It could be, you know, somebody that is in the industry, somebody that puts on an event.
Yep.
So we've got that. We've got somebody that's completely ate up and completely obsessed with dual sport and adventure bikes.
We like that.
And we got somebody else that does a podcast too.
That is a rarity.
So it's almost like that Step Brothers thing. Like, did we just become best friends? Kind of deal. So without further ado, let's welcome onto the show, Mr. Drew Faulkner.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
What's going on, bub?
It's becoming winter around here, which means my mood is changing. But talking bikes is definitely the program we can get on here to try to make it through the snowy season here in the Midwest.
Yeah, coincidentally, that was the origin of this podcast. Was none of us rode in winter, and we needed something bike related to kind of pass the time, and
we're getting into that
at least bench race a little bit.
Yeah. We like to refer to this as seasonal depression time.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately,
talking bikes kind of
vitamin D's at a premium, and so is happiness this time of year.
Fire the cameras up and get some vitamin B. You know what I mean?
I've ridden through the entire winter, but I'm not going to lie to you. It becomes very utilitarian. You're doing it. You're glad you're doing it.
Yep.
But it's not the same fun that you're having in May, right? It's just it's not the case.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate part of the area that we're in. You know, we're not in Utah or anywhere out west where it's nice and warm. Florida, Wayne in Australia, he was asking us there on the episode past, like, when's your guys' riding season? Is it year long? No, unfortunately, it's ending right now. So
if you're man enough, it can be year long. Unfortunately, I'm not.
It can. Did you see the picture on the FDSR group that I posted? It was a guy on the old Transalp with the skis on his feet.
Yep.
So, you know, that's an option out there to get yourself riding in the wintertime.
Yeah, I've got the hippo hands, the big things that go over your hand guards to get the wind and all that off of you. It makes a difference. My biggest issue is trying to layer up. I can either be warm when I'm moving at 55 or then I'll be roasting, on the trails and stuff. It's hard to split that difference.
It is. It's also hard to try to strap a torpedo heater on the back of your bike whenever you run down the road. So that's an option too.
Yeah.
Well, Drew, let's just get started with the basics here, my friend. Where were you born and raised at?
I'm actually from Dayton, Ohio. Been here my whole life with some vacations paid for by the U.S. taxpayer a couple times.
That's so you're referring to your military background.
Yeah. I spent 2 years in the Middle East.
Okay. What time frame was that?
I signed up for the National Guard August of 2001 and found myself on active duty very quickly.
I was going to say that's
that's understandable.
Yeah, that's definitely a interesting time to be in the military. Because, definitely went to were you in Iraq?
Yeah, I was in Kuwait mostly, 03, 04. Stayed in Iraq for 13 months the second time. But I got deployed to Louisiana for Katrina. I went to different schools around the country. And then when I was finished, I was going to college. And it was funny because I ran into some people in college who served and I had more active duty time than they did. It was kind of odd.
That's cool. How did motorcycles come into your life?
You know, it's a funny story and a lot of people have it, right? I was probably about 3 or 4. My dad had a motorcycle and he took me for a ride around the block and then sold it the next day. My mom was not keen on having motorcycles and kids. And then I came home from overseas, was going through trials and tribulation of reacclimating to civilian life here in Dayton. And as dumb as it sounds, and I'm dead serious, Tron Legacy is on and I'm watching this movie and I'm revisiting it from being about 5 and watching the original. And I'm like, dude, that Ducati, yeah, I need one of those. And so that, I started to catch the fever at that point. And then it was going through like a 150cc scooter because that was the cheap, easy way to do it. And this is back when, gas being $4 or $5 a gallon was like a real thing because that would have been that, that was probably 2010-ish, 2011-ish when this happened. But, 2008 is when all that stuff went nuts. It was fresh in everybody's mind.
Right.
And then 2013, I was graduating from college. It was my 30th birthday, and my wife set up to buy me a 2013 Triumph Speedmaster from the dealer here in Dayton. So that was when it really started to get wild.
Good deal. I noticed the Triumph hat, so and I've seen the pictures of the Scrambler. So obviously, you are a fan of our friends in the UK.
I'm a motosexual man. I've never been on a motorcycle I don't like. I mean, I've
said the same thing. I have as much fun getting up on a 7 horsepower Trail 90 as I do my KTM trail bike, and I just like getting on the ride.
2 up.
It doesn't. Yeah,
me and you rode that together.
Me and you, me and Arthur, me and Shiloh. Yeah. Things like the Village Doorknob. Everybody got a turn.
I've got a Harley Sportster. I got a 13 Triumph Scrambler. I now have a T7. I used to have a KTM 350 XCFW. I've got a WR250R dual sport. Like there's just not a bike that I don't like.
That's great. Let's dive into the racing and riding background you have a little bit. We were talking before the show started that you did some racing with KXCR, you said?
That's the bulk of it. Yeah, that's true. Let's see here. 2018, 2019. A lot of the adventure folks on Instagram were going out and racing the Northeast 24. I don't know if you guys have seen that race, the 24-hour race up here in Northeast.
Right.
And I wanted to do that. And a friend of mine who had been racing for a long time was like, maybe you should come out and race and try that on and see how it goes. So he took me over to Indiana. Indiana has a cross-country series. It's very good. I recommend folks check that out as well. And I raced that on my CRF 250L dual sport. And, I go into that like, I know how to ride. And after that, I'm like, I'm a complete moron. I have no idea what I'm doing on an off-road bike.
And the suspension on this bike is terrible.
Very true.
Yeah, we joke about the suspension on the 250Ls and 300Ls all the time. Our good buddy Arthur cut his teeth on a 250L, and respect to him, he made that bike go places it realistically shouldn't have, but the suspension was a real limitation.
I mean, I raced that 2 rounds in Indiana, and then the first round of KXCR, and I buried it to the pegs in a rut in a mutter, and I was like, might be looking into that whole race bike thing. COVID happened, money was available. We all know how that pretty much worked out for all of us in summer 2020, right? But seriously though, because I heard you guys talking about the 300L the other day, the 250L is a highly underrated bike. That bike is virtually unkillable. I mean, lots of Red River Scramble and all that other stuff has been put together with that bike. That bike changed everything for me. So I hate it when people dog on it because I'm like, look, it is what it is. So if you want a race bike, you're looking in the wrong place. But
we dog on it to some extent, but always I come in with the caveat of Honda sought to produce an affordable, reliable, entry-level dual sport bike, and that's exactly what they did. You know, they're fantastic for what they are, but as most riders tend to grow, you start to notice limitations on a bike. But like you said, you know, you're always having fun on two wheels. Sometimes it's fun to work around a bike's limitations to some extent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, without opening a whole can of worms in the middle of your episode, like I love the KLX 300R because frankly, that's the trail bike most people need here in the Midwest, here in Ohio, especially. Folks are like going to Wayne like 2 or 3 times a year. You need $11,000 KTM 350 so that you can ride OHV trails three times a year. That makes no sense.
Absolutely. And also, I also need a $1,000 matching KTM ready to race jersey and pants combo.
Yes.
You know, I've said the same thing several times in the past. Is you know, a lot of guys would have more fun on a more affordable bike. You know, it hurts a little less beating a you know, $7,000 or $8,000 machine around versus like a $12,000, $13,000 machine around. Yeah. And
plus, you're paying that much more money is not going to give you the skill that you're going to acquire just simply for being able to have a more affordable bike and have more seat time available to you.
That's really what it boils down to is take the amount of money you're going to put towards, you know, overkill KTM or something like that, buy good gear and put gas in the bike and go get some seat time in.
Absolutely.
And good tires. But,
you know, middle-aged guys, later-aged guys, getting close to retirement and all that stuff, it makes perfect sense to me. I get it. You know, you don't have the time you used to. But it's the young guys that are getting into it. They're like, oh, I got to go get a KTM. I'm like, fellas, the cheap talent only takes you so far, right? So,
we talk about kind of the affordability crisis and the aging out of this hobby and everything. And one of the big reasons is price points for bikes. Post-COVID, things got really crazy with the used bike market. It's calmed down a lot now. But, guys will say, you know, I could never get into that. I don't have, you know, X amount of money. And the amount they have in their heads like double what it would actually take to get in with a pretty competent machine. But I don't know. Everybody wants that ready to race orange.
Ready to restructure now.
That's the news. Right. The Perrier Insolvency Group.
That's pretty solid. But to bring it back around though, 250Ls, they're getting to be as cheap as $3,000 now. I bet you're going to see $2,500 come spring.
Yeah.
So people can get into it cheap, and it's a great bike.
Yeah, and there's not a huge difference between that and the 300L, unless you're really wringing its neck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Drew, let's talk about how the Red River Scramble came to be. And for those of us that are watching and maybe not know what that is, your approach to putting on a dual sport event is very unique in our space and our realm that we see, being a free event. And I'd love for you to talk about how that came to be and just the process of getting it where it's at today.
I mean, the genesis is probably the best way to start. So my wife was at the time traveling like 50%. So 2015, 2016, she was gone a lot. I bought the Scrambler in 16, and I just rode the crap out of it. So she'd be gone. I'd ride to Kentucky every weekend, every other weekend. I was there all the time. And I'm just, you know, Instagram was like on fire back then and not censored and throttled and all the wild stuff. So you met all the coolest people on motorcycles that were doing adventure stuff on Instagram. And so people were seeing that I was down in Red River Gorge with regularity, like, oh, we should go get pizza. So 2017, it's going to be like July. And I'm like, all right, let's have a meetup. So I just posted up on Instagram. We all meet up at Miguel's Pizza on Saturday morning. 12 guys from 6 states show up. And I'm like, well, that was a blast. Let's do that again. So the next year it's like, all right, let's meet on Friday night, and it's 50 people. Then the next year, let's meet on Thursday, and it's 80, 100 people. And so it's just grown. We had 500 registrations this year. Needless to say, Hurricane Helene put a pretty significant dent into the people showing up or the people leaving early, right? But it's just this grassroots event that it's just come out and let's have an adventure. Daniel Boone Backcountry Byway is a major like OHV network that's all legal county roads. So it's primarily a Jeep type thing, which is great because you can take big bikes there. And I've got a lot of options for what I would consider to be like scenic or novice level trails. Now, don't be fooled, right? Like race bike guys are going to go, these trails aren't hard, but anybody who's on something that's not a plated race bike is going to realize like, Jeeps tend to really jack up the trail and make things interesting, if nothing else, right? So I pre-ride the routes every year and basically rate them on, novice, intermediate, hard. And then I have a top shelf that I create a second section called dual sport, which I will tell adventure bike people to stay away from it unless you like it super spicy, because that's just me basically taking the safety off. Like, all right, I'm going to go find the scary stuff. So if you want to do nut stuff and you're not happy, then go ride the dual sport routes. But yeah, I publish the routes. You show up to the rally and you can like scan one of the sandwich boards of the QR code and pull it up on Rever, or you can download the GPX files and put it on your GPS. And basically I have registration for 2 hours, basically each day of the rally. And then on Saturday night, I give some free stuff away. And then we had geocache type sticker caches this year that I hid out there, and all of it's exclusive. You have to show up to get this stuff. So you get your rally sticker, or you go find it, whoever. Then next year, everything's totally different. We don't recycle any of that stuff. And ultimately, it's just, I enjoy doing it. I like putting it together for the community. This is where my folks are from. My folks live right on the north side of Red River Gorge. So to me, it's promoting tourism, and more or less, I'm throwing a party I want to go to. That's really what it comes down to.
That's great, man. And that's such a unique approach. And honestly, I think that's what's in the long run has made you so successful and going to continue to make it successful is, you're enthusiast driven. You're not money hungry like a lot of these other events are, let's be honest. And that style and format appeals to the mass majority of people, I feel. Sure.
My biggest fear, that's the thing, right? Like people are like, was it a race? I'm like, no, it's just like, look, I've ridden most of these trails on my Triumph Scrambler. I'm trying to tell you, come out and ride this stuff. Come out and I'll send you down the easy stuff. Just dip your toe into it. This is the perfect environment to meet up with other people and get out on the trail and try out adventure riding. And before long, people have got the fever. Now, I'm like a dirt bike with plate sales guy now, because everybody shows up on like a KTM 390 or like a GS, and then 2 years later they got a KTM 350 with a plate. That's a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah.
Our group over the years has turned very much orange.
Yeah.
You start looking out at the guys that come do 3 or 4 detour hard loop. It's mostly KTMs and a number of plated 2-strokes anymore.
Yeah.
For all that, but yeah, we've noticed the same thing.
Yeah, and that's something else I want to touch on too. Do you, as somebody that puts on an event, and we do too, I feel sometimes that the terminology that's used to describe the events gets confusing in a way. You have rallies, you have dual sports, you have enduros, you have a scramble as you coined there. Our definition of a dual sport seems to be a lot different than other people's. Because we like the hard stuff. We want to beat you to death on Saturday, and then our Sunday loop is more out there for the adventure bike guys or the guys just starting out, 50-50 tires, that type of stuff. Yep. But you have this weird mix of guys showing up on plated 2-strokes that maybe sometimes they complain that there's not enough hard stuff, and then the guy that shows up on a DR 650 with 50-50 tires is completely in over his head.
Yeah.
We had 2 gentlemen show up earlier this year for our event on KTM 890 Enduro Rs, and swore up and down that they've done lots of challenging hard dual sport events, and they were very in over their head within the first couple of miles. You feel bad for people like
Yeah.
that. You don't want people to get hurt. You don't want people to have a bad time. But I feel like maybe, that terminology is starting to get a little bit too meshed together to describe too many events.
Yeah, I agree. We're trying to create something that the average rider with some decent experience can come and ride even the hard loop. They're not going to. It's not about finishing in a certain span of time. It's going to take them longer than we have some A-class guys that show up to do it, but
they blitz it like it's a race and they're done in 4 hours.
We have had guys that show up on plated 2-strokes with gummy tires talking about how it's too easy. It's like I would hope that it was a little bit too easy for your plated woods bike with gummy tires and 10 psi front and rear. So the terminology, there's no standard as to what enduro means or what adventure riding means from one person to the other. I don't look for that to change at any point soon.
I guess I'm on a one-man, technically it's 2-man mission. I have to give Brett Tax a lot of credit here. So if folks don't know who that is, look him up. Brett Tax published how to rate your adventure skills and how to rate an adventure trail. And so I took that and I modified it. So if you go to redriverscramble.com and you look up where to ride, I have a guide under the adventure stuff. So when I say I've got scenic, intermediate, hard, I actually list the exact obstacles you should expect to see on those trails. Nice. So this is what easy sounds like. If that sounds too easy, then this is what the next level is. And you can actually read it. Obviously, there's some photographs on the website, and everybody knows, right? Like, I wish GoPro would tell you the truth, but it makes every obstacle look like a stick, not a log. So that doesn't help. But to some degree, when I say that, you may have a creek crossing that may be in excess of 18 inches. Like, is that hard enough? Like, is that, these ledges may be upwards of 20 inches. Can you climb a 20-inch ledge, without help or whatever? Yeah, we need to know those things. So I'm trying to do that. And that's also listed on sandwich boards at the event. So you can read that. And I've even, because I do multiple trails, to your point, right? To me, a lot of dual sports, a lot of AMA stuff, it's it's one trail and everybody's on it. And you may have a GPS, or you might have a roll chart or whatever. I'm sending everybody out on different loops from different places. And so I even list them in order of difficulty. So if you've ridden this one, you can now judge the rest of the field based on where you thought that was for your level of fun, and you can move up or down and make those choices. So I want people to go out and have a good time.
Yeah, that's a lot of effort you're putting in to rate trails and give guys an idea of what they're getting themselves into. I'm sure there's a lot of people that really appreciate that, because it's really hard to just kind of just try to describe to somebody what they're signing up for.
It's my favorite. I'm diming out my neighbor who's probably here, and he's not the only one. It's anyone. There's a place called Old Fincastle Road, and so anybody who's listening who knows Data Blue Backcountry, they know exactly where I'm talking about. And we all see pictures of it, and we go, "That's not a big deal." And then you get there, and you're like, "Whoa, that is way steeper than it looks in that picture." It's not excessively steep. It's just the rocks are way bigger when you're standing on them than when you look at it in a photo.
I gave James some footage. I went and did several laps around a section of private single track and went back and watched the footage, and it just does not do it justice. There's a nosebleed downhill where there's virtually no traction. It's a point and pray kind of scenario, and it makes it look like you're just gently rolling down a little hill.
And unfortunately, you post that stuff up like, hey, this is what you're getting into. The guys on the 890s see the video. Oh, that's nothing. Yeah. And where was the first place that I saw them whenever I was street riding? Was that downhill? So.
First off camber section, and there they are.
And another thing too, like you touched on earlier in the show, that weather plays such a huge role in difficulty of things sometimes. So we have one of the worst droughts we've had in 20 years in our area, and places that we ride constantly that are always muddy, awful places had no problem with traction. And I think that's something that kind of took away from our ride a little bit and made it easier in a sense. You had to deal with Hurricane Helene. My real good buddy in the club, Justin, he went down and did the Red River Scramble this year and was talking about how some of that wind and the trees falling down, and just it was insanity for the most part.
It was like nothing we'd ever seen before, right? Like I'm like holding the safety meeting in the morning, like, okay, everything I've told you every other year and all these signs around here mean nothing now. Like we have no idea what's out there, and it could be savage. So, stick together, be smart, if you need anything, blah, 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 and it was funny because guys rolled out in the morning, and then it came unhinged on Friday afternoon, and they rolled back in. I'm like, oh, thank God they're alive. And the stories, man, they had, they showed me a video where they finally got around this tree. The tree had fallen over the road, and they'd kind of like gone around it, and they're on pretty big street bikes. And halfway through there, a truck comes around the corner and just plows right into the tree. Like, wow. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. And something that was really funny, Justin came back, and he was talking that him and a group of guys that he was there with doing the event had decided that, it was in their best interest to leave their bikes and stuff there and try to get out of there as quickly as they possibly could. So they all went together and was renting storage units to leave the bikes there. And then at the same time, they're like, well, this also gives us an excuse to have to come back down and pick these bikes up, and then we can just ride a couple of days while we're down here too. So that was kind of funny seeing the planning process.
Make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
That. Yeah.
No, definitely.
No, that's good stuff, man. Where would you like to see the future of your event as we go along in the years here?
To me, the biggest thing is trying to evolve with what people want to see. And it's funny, my buddy Mark says it best, and I like hearing it from other people rather than myself. To me, I call it, he calls it, and I agree. It's a rider's rally, right? Like I love March Moto Madness, and there are a lot of others. They have a lot of stuff going on at the campground after the fact. But for Red River Scramble, it is completely about riding. I love making routes. I can't help but memorize the terrain and the difficulty and all that, all those ratings. They're just in my head. There's nothing I can do about that. So that's the easy part for me. But I like giving excuses for people to go out and see new things. So the new sticker cache thing has been awesome. I get to think about different places to put stuff where people would see it. I design all the stickers from scratch. So it's like, oh, that's a cool sticker. Where am I going to put that? Oh, I know a spot, I put that stuff out there. And it was huge this year. I put 30 stickers in each one, and all of the containers came back to me. So I put 29 in there. And if you want the 30th sticker, you got to bring the container back to me so that I don't have to go find it. Right. So that paid off big. And so, but people are super excited about it, so that's what I love is people coming back and hearing the story. So it's nice when the counties do a little maintenance here and there because it changes the terrain some. And then ultimately it's trying to get access to more trails and not lose access to trails because we obviously have that issue. Local landowners get upset with the side-by-side community. They install gates, these things happen.
Yep, dude.
That
You're preaching to the choir as far as that's concerned.
Exactly. That's extremely similar to what we experience here in terms of land use, especially with disgruntled landowners, side-by-sides, etc.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I appreciate anybody that puts on an event, right? But I think there's something to be said when you can change up your route every year and do some new things. You're not seeing the same thing over and over again, or you're not riding somewhere that, let's be honest, that everybody and their brother can go ride anytime they want to. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not my cup of tea, so to speak.
Yeah.
But doing what we do with having these private property sections, like no one else is allowed on that unless there are events going on. So it's always fresh. It's nice. Now, we've got to utilize Jeep roads, side-by-side roads, that sort of thing. And, earlier, it was literally 2 days before the ride, one of our main vital connector county roads that we use, we went through and we put up a few arrows to kind of guide people through some of the turns. And I'm getting phone calls from landowners like, why is there a race going on through here? And it's like, well, it's not a race. It's a dual sport ride. You don't own this county road. Oh, I own the road. I'm going to put a gate up. And you're like,
right.
Yeah, it's a hassle sometimes dealing with landowners around here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Where we hold the campground where we hold the event also has a few miles of trails there. There are some perks, right? I always communicate a lot with the locals. I mean, it is 4 hours away from me, but I talk to the locals a lot. I read maps in the holidays. I'm a super nerd, right? Like I'm pulling up Gaia from 1960 and I'm like, hey, there's a trail here. Like, I think this is legit. And I found some. I found multiple roads. I'm like, this is a public road. It's been on the map since 1960 and nobody knows it. And it's not on Daniel Boone Backcountry Byway, which means we kind of get to do something partially exclusive that nobody knows about. So we got a few of those sections, which are kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great. We've kind of been able to do that here in West Virginia as well with the Country Roads Coalition, who's kind of tried to get all of these different off-road disciplines together on the same page. And we've fought gate closures. We found cool roads that are on the West Virginia Department of Highways county road maps, and I've utilized a lot of those for our stuff as well. So those resources are out there, and you just have to do a little bit of digging, and it's amazing the things you can find.
Yeah, we've talked about the 24 Hours of Appalachia rally, where you can simulate Baja in the state of West Virginia to some extent. Not the terrain, but the general overall point-to-point rally feel. But, a lot of these abandoned county roads and everything, we always talk about, you can have an enduro ride, an adventure ride, whatever, and barely leave the county that we're in. There's a lot of guys dream about Moab, which I understand. They dream about the Idaho Grit trails and everything. But, man, just in this state, there's a lot of stuff that you can go out and experience that is not commonly ridden. Yeah,
and same in your area, man. Red River Gorge is a staple when it comes to adventure and dual sport riding. It's fantastic.
I was so pumped when they wanted to do 24 Hours Appalachia down there. I was going to go and take pictures, and it turns out you talked about in the last episode, whatever, like I had to go find a new place to stay. So I actually had to cancel because I had a chance to get a rental, and that's actually where we're videoing from today. Fortunately, that is a good thing. But I got to help them. He's like, hey, I'm looking for a couple of places more to connect. So he's comparing notes with me and whatnot. So I'm glad, and I'm hoping they're going to do that again, so I get a chance to go down there and do it.
Yeah, Jed's a good friend, and I'm definitely looking forward to 2025. Any of those events that I can do, I'm 100% on board. I did the summer rally in Hinton on the Africa Twin. Absolutely loved it. I mean, it was an amazing experience. I got to do the February run in the Jeep, and that was a different experience. But and we've talked about before. Being a dual sport and adventure motorcycle guy takes away from our Jeep hobby that we like too, because you get out there and you're like, okay, I could have already been through here about 3 hours ago, and it just kind of ruins the vibe a little bit anymore.
No, it's funny.
It's hard to go back. Yeah. Once you start being able to blitz things that would take you over an hour to get through on a Jeep, or obstacles that would be a nightmare to get up, and you're risking blown out U-joints and this, that, and the other on a bike. A lot of it's just too easy in some cases.
Yeah, I got a WR250R now, and I just like, it's fun because you if you want to see a bunch of stuff today, you just putt around on that thing, and not do a whole lot of work, and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I think that's a good time for us to open up the 6-pack of questions, and without further ado, let's get this started. Six-pack questions is brought to you by Air, because everyone needs it. Still looking for sponsors there. All right, first up, my friend. Favorite trail tunes? Do you listen to music while you're out there riding?
Absolutely. I go through a lot of different things. Some days it'll just be a country mix, and some days it's an 80s mix. Some days I'll throw up movie soundtracks and things like that. It just depends on what I'm doing.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Get the Godzilla theme, like he's chasing you or something.
You haven't lived till you've ridden enduro to the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack.
I was thinking more like the Batman, the Dark Knight, but yeah,
I am the Bat. Love it. All right, next up, Trevor.
What would be your dream bike?
Oh man, I did put my T7 in the garage, but I don't think that's fair. Man, right now I would probably be something on par with like Polteras's T7 or something of that flavor. Sure. I can't say I'm too crazy about it. And obviously I've been polishing the Scrambler for 8 years now, so it's tough to answer that question.
Yeah, so like a world raid then? Something
I was going to say, I don't think anything factory at this point can really pull my arm because I'm so particular about stuff.
Gotcha. Next up, what's your favorite terrain to ride in?
All of it, but truthfully, I think rocks is probably my favorite. The more rocks, the better.
Next up,
What's your favorite trail snack?
Cliff bars more often than not.
Yeah, I'm a big Cliff Bar guy.
Yeah, calorie dense.
Yeah, exactly. Calorie dense. They're pretty easy on your stomach. Just got to make sure you got plenty of water when you go to eat one.
I have a funny story about that.
Tell us. Go ahead.
There's on the Ohio, Southern Ohio Adventure Loop. There's a trail called Brent's Back Door. It's pretty gnarly on a big bike, and I got stuck in a spot. I'd actually decided it was time to turn around, and on my way back, I got stuck. I'm like, okay, I'm like running out of breath. I could barely hold this T7 up. I must park it here for a second. I'm gonna have a Cliff Bar. And I was out of water, and I was about to do it, and I choked to death because it was just like, we made some bad decisions here. So,
yeah, I found myself in a similar position once. I went to meet these guys to do some routing, and had too many the night before. Woke up late, no breakfast, no nothing. Just enough time to get on the bike and go meet them. I was like, I'll just throw a Cliff Bar in my bag and I'll eat it while I'm out there. And I was trying to eat it between trails with no water, and it was It was rough.
Yeah, it's like trying to eat like 4 MRE crackers at once.
Yeah. with no jalapeno cheese.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I found a Nature Valley bar in the bottom of my Liat bag the other day, and it lived up to that meme used to say where it said "fucking crumbs everywhere." Yeah. It was down in the bottom of my bag for sure. It's fantastic. All right, what's your must-have trail tool?
Man, that's tough. Probably an air inflator. It's funny. We were talking about that on the front end. Yeah, it's funny. Like I'm
not sponsored.
Yeah, I was to say I was totally unsponsored. Because I like to air down before I get on the hard stuff with the big bike. Like I need it all the time. I mean, like I would say, tire irons and axle wrenches and all that stuff. But it's like if it's one tool, then I'm going to use the inflator more than anything else.
Awesome. Last but certainly not least.
If you could only do 2 mods to a bike, which 2 would you choose?
Heated grips first. Do tires count as a mod?
Absolutely, because let's face it, most stock dual sport bike tires suck.
Yep.
And they don't call stock DR650 tires death wings for nothing.
Yeah.
Heated grips were probably the first thing that went on the Scrambler. That's a real thing.
Cool. All right, so I touched on this off camera a little bit. So as I was saying there, sometimes whenever you're doing a podcast or you're trying to do a blog, what have you, you're trying to come up with topics, obviously, that are going to interest people. And sometimes it's pretty easy to ramble on for an hour or two about a topic. So I want to try to condense that a little bit. I've got 6 different topics, and this is things that are pretty popular in our segment, in our sport here. Just give me a simple, like, one sentence or one little phrase about each of these. All right. And I'm going to go through them here. First up, COVID-19.
The best motorcycle salesman we've ever had, but unfortunately it's going to crash the power sports industry.
Next up.
What's your thoughts on Chinese manufactured bikes?
The CF Moto 450 is the adventure bike we've all been asking for, so that's great, but I'm worried that population collapse in China is going to stunt that.
Next up, this middleweight segment.
It is my happy place. I've eyeballed the T7 since it came out in 2019, and I finally bought one, so it's on now.
Electric bikes and their impact on the hobby.
As a guy who lives in the city, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. Unfortunately, the industry has lost its mind. It's not going to replace. They're trying to compete head-to-head.
KTM.
Up until about 4 weeks ago, KTM was probably the best adventure bike or motorcycle you could buy for the money. Unfortunately, they oversold.
Moto journalism
is a rapidly evolving place, considering more people are doing videos and podcasting right anymore. Suddenly, my blog is blowing up, and I'm not upset about that.
So we can kind of dissect a little bit of these as we continue. But yeah, that last one there, the moto journalism, we're starting to see, I feel at least, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. The days of the print magazine have went the way of the dodo bird. There's still some standouts out there, but I think that you're seeing more and more people trying to digest their information, and their research from YouTube, from podcasts, from a wide range of digital media. In my opinion, you feel the same way?
I agree. It's very multifaceted, right? Because I'm a freelance blogger here and there, so I've published some articles in some places. I love print. I would prefer it because I can digest the information dramatically faster. Maybe it's because I'm about to turn 42 and I'm just old, but I just don't understand watching hours and hours of video for something that I could have read in 15 minutes. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree. I find, and I'm, probably about 10 years your junior, I find videos to be exhausting in a lot of ways. I can scan an article, a print article, pretty fast and identify like what I find to be key points of information about something versus some YouTubers' production value and everything that's baked into it that I understand its place, but it doesn't serve my interest for information.
And we've talked about this too. It seems to me that the success rate, the hit rate, at least in my opinion, is not, it's 50-50. For every awesome YouTuber that you get that you want to watch, they're making the guys that can't ride famous. Like
pros, there's pros and cons. Pros is anybody can become a moto vlogger. Cons is anybody can become a moto vlogger. You've got people that have somehow established themselves as voices in the industry that don't necessarily have the level of riding capability that they purport to have. People are making purchase decisions based on some of these YouTube personalities reviewing bikes they've never ridden, or that they rode for 15 minutes in a very relaxed, in a very relaxed environment.
And most of the times, a paid review.
Yeah,
so
that's
not very.
I always think it's very funny when guys will try to defend like, this company flew me out and this, but it's an unbiased review. Like I know it's not.
Well, if I can steal the mic and my soapbox together, I think we need to stop and look at like what happened to print. And people are going to go, well, young people don't like it. I'm like, no. The advertising bought what was being written, and it was the vast majority or too much of what the content was ads in the paper or the magazine, whatever it was. Now we have YouTube and it doesn't look like an ad, but it's an ad. Like you said, these people who are producing these YouTube videos are just producing content because they need to get paid. And if you follow, like I won't name channels, but there's been several channels. I'm like, I can't watch this channel anymore. It's the same shit. They're just releasing something to release something.
Guys that I've watched for years, I came to the same conclusion. They finally become, it's like everything's just a paid ad for whatever manufacturer's bike they're riding in that video.
And get on there and complain about the grind that they have to do. Like that.
Well, and I hope that I think the podcast world is beginning to shape that, right? We have a guy like Joe Rogan, who's the mothership and who's showing us how it's done. It's a passion project for him. And that's where we have to get back to. How do we produce content as motorcyclist people for people who want to see it and get on a subscription-based model? I'm not saying that because that's the problem now. We can't even say that word anymore because BMW wants you to pay a subscription for heated seats, like evil bastards. But we need to get to that point, right? Because it's like you pay to go to a concert because you want to see a band. You pay to go to a movie because you want to see a movie. You should pay for the content for motorcycle stuff that you want, rather than expect it for free and then get mad that the crap that you're seeing isn't good or that it's skewed. Like, because somebody else is paying for it. That doesn't make sense.
That's great. Great insight, man. Well, speaking along those lines, we obviously have to talk about your podcast, Moto Adventurer Unscripted.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how that came to be and what drove you to start putting that out there.
So I was talking about before, like my wife traveled a lot, and she's had some pretty significant health issues, which completely changed the trajectory I was on with adventure motorcycling, which led me to like racing, because then I could do it, one day. It's not like a full weekend, so on and so forth. And so, COVID happened, and I was working on the website and wanted to do big things. It's like, I can't get away from the house, but I have a microphone and I can talk to people through the internet, and that's easier than it's ever been. And I had listened, frankly, to a whole bunch of Joe Rogan. And as you guys all know, and I'm sure some of the listeners and viewers know, there's only so much motorcycle content out there. There, frankly, isn't enough. Like if you're a guy like me who's an engineer, at one point I just sat in front of a desk all day for 8 hours a day. I'll go through on Tuesday. Yeah, on Tuesday, I've been through every motorcycle podcast that I can stand to listen to. It's just the way it is. So I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. And that's the thing, right? If you want to see change in the world, you have to be that change. So that's me sitting down talking topics or with people or whatever.
Yeah, I think we're about to make kind of a similar point, you and I. It's difficult to come up with enough content to keep the train rolling. I mean, with any niche hobby related podcast, there's only so much that you can talk about, let alone only so much you can keep somebody's attention for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a struggle sometimes. So you have a co-host, correct?
Yes and no. My buddy Mark is like my unofficial co-host. Because what I want to do it Rogan style. I want somebody new on the show all the time. But sometimes there's a topic, and I don't necessarily want to spend time talking about just a topic that's in the news with a guest that's on, because I want the guest to tell their story. So Mark and I will talk about, KTM or, the Super Bowl, whatever's going on.
Everybody that's out there watching, definitely check out your guys' latest episode there about KTM. I listened to it last night, and it was, you guys hit every single nail on the head. I was in full agreement with your guys' outlook and potential solutions for them. So definitely check that one out.
Yeah, for whatever it's worth. I mean, because I'm sure people, you guys did a podcast, a show about it as well. But it's going to take a lot to fix KTM. But in the end, them trying to have 3 brands with all the exact same bikes, what accountant ran this show? That's a horrible idea.
That's a point that I've brought up in the past. Is anytime an investment conglomerate involves itself in a hobby related industry, it's a recipe for failure. The short-term profits are, there's something to be said for short-term profit. It's at the expense of the brand being able to survive as a whole. I was just telling James earlier this week, it'd be really funny if KTM sold the Gas name rights back to Raju, since they're producing in Gas' old factory. And I didn't understand that either. I understand Husky's supposed to be premium, KTM's middle of the road, and Gas is kind of their lower end. But the price point spread is so insignificant that it really, they're competing against each other.
Doesn't make sense. And to your point, actually, because you're Jeep guys, look at what Fiat has done to Jeep.
Yeah, same situation.
Yeah, anybody who's watching and paying attention now, if you're into Jeeps, watch how that market's going to change dramatically in the next 5 years.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, 100%. I just hope I can still get parts for the 15 I'm looking across the desk at right here. And as long as I can do that, I'll be a happy camper.
I can always get parts for my XJ.
Sell and get an XJ. That's exactly what I was going to say.
I can always get parts for my XJ.
You can't afford to do that anymore. If I had all the Jeep Cherokees I've had in my life growing up back now, I could retire. The prices that they want for that stuff is ridiculous.
I know this is a motorcycle podcast. I look back at the condition that my XJ was in when I first got it. And my goodness, I wish I would have bought a crappier one and beat on it and kept the one that I have nice. Because nobody ever dreamed that these things would become somewhat of a classic or a rarity in 10 years. But
make straight sixes great again.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm a big Toyota guy, but I have a serious soft spot for an AMC straight six.
There's not a straight six that anybody bitches about. There's a reason.
Yeah, they're good motors. Good motors. Well, Drew, what is your outlook on the future of our sport? Do you see it continuing to grow? Do you see, maybe we've talked about a fear of an aging out process. Where do you see the future of dual sport adventure motorcycles?
We have an affordability problem that actually has a solution on the horizon, in my opinion. And I think that, I'm the oldest millennial in the room. I think that millennials and Zoomers, they like travel and they like camping. And I think motorcycles pair well with that. So we have to fix the affordability crisis. Now, the reality is unless some of these manufacturers have managed to copy Toyota's business model, and I doubt it in the power sports world, and completely limit supply, we're going to watch motorcycle prices go into the basement in probably the next 18 to 24 months. Please write that down. I don't want to say I hope I'm wrong, because in this case, it's not about being right. It's about making motorcycles affordable, even though somebody's going to get stuck holding the bag. But I think we're going to see a lot of pain the way we did in 2008. But look at where we are now, right? Like the cafe racer craze gave birth to this adventure and scrambler craze that I love, and I'm sure lots of people watching now love as well. It's like sometimes you just have to deal with winter. It's just the way that it works.
Yeah. So you talked about being an engineer. I work as an engineer.
Sure.
Very familiar with the whole sit and rock behind a desk for a living thing. I think that a lot of people my age, James's age, etc., are in a similar position in various different industries. People want to capture some like essence of pioneer spirit and adventure, and bikes are one of the best ways to do it. It's in a sense somewhat counterculture because a lot of people aren't doing the whole riding thing. Like, in our friend group, everybody's doing it, but in friend groups of people who don't ride, it's a real rarity. And I think it's a great way to go out and make life more exciting versus just sitting and rotting behind a desk.
I mean, for me, like I said, I day trip a lot. So like this year, the longest day of the year, my buddy and I go out and we ride down to Kentucky, and I was doing like this like Daniel Boone and bourbon type thing because there's so many sights to see. We go ride and we stop by Buffalo Trace Distillery. We also hiked Pilot Knob. So we go through all these twisty roads and look at Blue Licks Battlefield, and then we would go up to Pilot Knob. We hike all the way to Pilot Knob, fly the drone, go back on the bike, and we did all this in a day. Like adventure riding is incredible because you can, just pack some hiking shoes and some shorts and get after it. It's awesome.
I've said the same thing multiple times before. I come from the racing background, and to me, in my little segment, it was adventure and dual sport bikes were what the old slow people that couldn't hack it on the racetrack did anymore. And life comes along, kids come along, job responsibility. You realize that trying to kill yourself for a $3 piece of wood is not worth it in the end. And at the end of the day, you're paying so much money to be out on a trail for less than 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So when the opportunity came up for me to try it for the first time, I just, I don't want to do that. Within the first, 3.5 hours, I saw more of my state of West Virginia than I ever had in my entire life, and was instantly hooked. So I completely agree that it's such a good segue to get out there and experience the world, experience your area, and see things that you're never going to see regardless otherwise.
Yeah, it's just nice getting out. The longer I do any hobby, I'm a big outdoorsman. Riding, complements that very well. Just like I like being on two wheels on any bike, I just like being out and, seeing more of my state and enjoying more of what there is to offer out there.
I mean, you guys touched on it earlier, right? Like I've got my tunes jamming. I'm headed toward the Ohio River. The sun's just coming up. There's fog lifting off all the cornfields. Like I'm not exaggerating. It's a religious experience to be out there alone, just watching the world wake up. I love it.
Yeah.
And people that have never done it don't understand how nice that is.
Yeah.
Good deal, man. So Moto Adventurer Unscripted is on Spotify. Obviously, is there any other channels that we can find you on?
It should be on Apple Podcast now. It was probably on Google Music or whatever they called it. So it's available in a lot of places. Although I've also seen like Stitcher and some other places have since folded. So obviously the vast majority of the listeners are on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And then obviously I have Moto Adventurer, all one word, .com. And obviously Moto ADVR on Instagram. So I'm running my mouth somewhere.
Well, I'm sure we'll continue to listen along with everybody else that just loves this type of journalism, so to speak, and just wants to eat it all up. I know I'm one of those guys.
Yeah, man. I'll be sitting at my engineering job later this week listening to you you talk about KTM, and I'm sure that I'll see some points that I really agree with.
Looking forward to hearing feedback.
Good deal. Let's segue into a little bit of industry news. All right. First thing, there's a little bit of a theme here that we've seen here recently, and that's legends moving on. And we had 2 deaths in the motorcycle and adventure kind of segment and space that were a little bit sad. First up, Malcolm Smith passed away at the age of, I think he was 91, 92 years old. Obviously, Malcolm was such a pioneering spirit and person in our sport. Kind of kicked the door down with On Any Sunday with Steve McQueen and the gang there. You know, just lived a fantastic life. Was such a great person. You know, Malcolm Smith Racing was such a huge part of my life. Just parts, gear. You know, just having that enthusiast mentality driving a company was something that was so awesome and refreshing to see. I got a funny Malcolm Smith story really quick if you got time here. So we go to the 2007 WISP GNCC race in Deep Creek, Maryland. And Saturday night before the motorcycle race on Sunday, they decided that they wanted to have a pit bike race in the little half pipe for the snowboards they have there, right? So they set up this little kind of enduro cross course there. And at the time, my sister was racing a TTR 125 that was set up like crazy style. It had YZ80 front forks on it, big bore kits, exhaust. Like it was no longer a TTR 125 anymore. And our good buddy from GNCC and pro racer Ryan Eccles wanted to try to give it a shot there. And so he shows up at the starting line on the bike, and it's him and a couple other local guys. And then you had Jimmy Jarrett from Team Suzuki on a DRZ 125 that was set up pretty much the same way. And the last guy that shows up is Malcolm Smith on a 1975 XR75. And he's looking up and down the road, shaking his head like, this isn't a pit bike race. What the hell are these things up here? He said, I hear the cam loping from here on that TTR up there. This isn't fair. But got a kick out of that. He was such a great guy. I got a lot of pictures, got to talk to him. And he got 3rd place there. He did really good on that.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, he was 73 at the time, probably. Yeah. You know, he was up there and still just banging bars with these younger guys. It was awesome to see.
Unfortunately, and the next person you're going to talk about is going to fall in the same category. A lot of the most prolific names of early era enduro, like twin shock, no power valve, 2-stroke era. A lot of those names are approaching the ends of their legacy.
Yeah, and the next one is no exception. We also lost Mary McGee. Mary was an absolutely pioneering, awesome spirit and person for any type of women's competitive off-road, any type of events. She was big into road racing. She was big into car racing and obviously motorcycles. For those of you who maybe not got a chance to see it, it's actually on YouTube, ESPN. There was a great special that they did about her life here just recently. I got a chance to watch it over Thanksgiving, and it was really awesome to just see her passion and her spirit to try to push women's sports to the forefront, and just basically being the sole figure fighting against a lot of men back in those days. Yeah. What a lot of people don't know is she was the first person to finish Ironman style, the Baja 500 back in the early days on an old Husky. Come in the first pitch, she was talking on that special about how the chain sprockets were gone. There was only like 3 spokes holding the rear wheel together when she come in there, but somehow sucked it up and finished. And rightfully should have won that Ironman award, and they gave it to somebody in a vehicle that won it instead, because girls weren't allowed to race. And as somebody that has a daughter that's fully ingrained into riding motorcycles and a wife who's just starting out too, it's definitely a big loss for the community. And next up, we have some what we like to call, and I posted this on our Facebook page there, up to something season. We got some team changes starting out. It's that time of year. First up, Cody Webb is no longer with Sherco.
Nope.
Cody started out with Sherco when he was 15 years old in their trial bike segment. I know a lot of us like to refer to him as our Jackie Robinson when it comes to hard enduro. As an American, he's always out there putting the forefront out. 5-year relationship with Sherco comes to an end. It'll be interesting to see who picks him up in the future. Probably not going to be Gas or Husqvarna, right?
Who? Spoiler alert, I have a suspicion Sherco. I wouldn't say they're behind KTM, but I question how things are going over there right now.
Yeah, it's interesting for all those manufacturers. And last and certainly not least, Mr. Caleb Russell has decided to come out of retirement and attempt another comeback to try to dominate the off-road world again, as he did just a few years back. And, we heard some rumblings of this a few months ago. And from what I was told from some pretty reliable sources, he actually approached KTM and wanted to come back and race with them again. And they said, nah, you're past your prime. You're too old. It's that's something that's went out the window. And he said, okay, that's fine. They kind of parted amicably, but he's going to Yamaha. So that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out here coming up next year. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more coming down the pike as like I said, we're in that season. So anything else that pops up, we'll be sure to share with everybody.
I got an anecdote to add to that. If folks didn't watch Paul Terrace race the T7 at Erzberg, he was hanging out with Caleb Russell like the whole time. It was so awesome.
I absolutely love how, obviously his talent precedes anything else, and he's a generational talent. But how awesome is it to see somebody like him become such a salesperson for a brand, and that brand not shun him away, but actually bring him in and adopt him into that. That's my favorite part of that whole situation.
I've got a lot to say about the Japanese manufacturers, but that's the thing is Yamaha keeps doing the right things. So like you said, wait, what? KTM doesn't want Caleb Russell? Like Yamaha would be foolish to not run with that. So that'll be awesome.
Especially with KTM's, every time the car comes around, I follow it semi-closely. I don't recognize anybody on KTM's Dakar team anymore. I'm not even entirely sure if Toby Price is, going to continue. Skylar Howell's got parted ways from Husky or whatever, went to Honda. I don't know. If you don't have no names to propel your brand to some extent, it's difficult to get everybody to latch on to a name that they don't recognize immediately sometimes.
I'd say Daniel Sanders is probably the guy that most people are going to get to know at this point. But Sam Sunderland and Toby are in a truck this year. It's going to be awesome.
Nice. I'm excited to see that. Yeah. Like one of the Kamaz trucks. It's technically a car, but I think it's a Toyota Hilux. But I'm not Okay. I thought we'd luck out and they'd be in one of the giant, 10-ton Kamaz trucks with like 50-inch tires.
Considering the number of Toyota Hiluxes I've seen in the Middle East, those big Russian trucks are cute.
Yeah.
Those guys are insane. Up on two wheels, changing the tire, going 100 mile an hour down the interstate.
You're right.
Check those videos out.
It's just one of those things that, like technicals and cockroaches and KLRs. That's who will inherit the earth when we're down here.
Yeah, 100%. Just make sure you got a milk crate on the cable. Yeah. Let's go through some of these comments before we get to the last portion of our show. Mr. Greg Blakey. It happened to me, 350 gang. Talking back there. Yeah, Greg, really great guy. He started coming around to our events and went from a DR650 to a KTM 350. So
it's the best 4-stroke woods bike you can buy.
He also says,
I'm a big fan of mine.
He just looked up your Red River Scramble. A better half gave him the thumbs up. If you guys are going in 2025, I'll ride out with you. We'll definitely be there, Greg. So we'll make an FDSR bandwagon trip down there for sure. No Go Moto on YouTube says the 890 was the wrong tool for the job at the 304 D4. That may be the gentleman's that came there. I know the one guy's name was Matthew, and we told you
can't fault somebody for giving it a shot. Though. I mean,
that's right.
It was a great point of conversation, and it's always interesting to see somebody try to take a big bike where it really shouldn't go.
We got a buddy of ours here that's kind of come into the club here recently in the last couple of years. His name's Dave Porter, and he's an animal. He's got a BMW 1250 GS. Comes rides all the single track stuff with us, and we give out an award for each loop that we give out every year called the Badass Award. So whoever does the most badass, cool thing, they win this little trophy. And Dave totaled his motorcycle, that big BMW, in one of these off-road sections, and he definitely brought one of the award.
Where it's got the toe lever front suspension, it actually broke the welded boss on what would be the top triple clamp.
Wow.
I think he beat it back straight and welded it. I think that thing's back on the road, but he pulled up and the handlebars were canted like visibly 20 plus degrees.
The best part of that was later on his Facebook, I see he posted a story up, right? He's riding down the road back he's about 15 miles away from where we were at.
The
handlebars are all
like
torqued up. The windscreen's off to the left. The front fender is completely destroyed. He's got a 30-pack of Miller Lite on his legs. And you look in the back, he's got the badass award strapped to the rear back on there. So that's just perfect.
Too cool.
That's why I love the adventure community, man. Like,
Yeah.
It's a party now.
Hell yeah. Up next, McVicker Farms is my buddy Justin. He said he went this year, and he'll definitely be going back 100%.
Those people are scarred forever. Like they've gone the first year for a hurricane. Like, I'm not gonna miss another one.
Yeah.
Trauma bonding is
Exactly.
Yeah. And No Go Moto. Yeah, it was me and Matt. Yeah. Thanks for coming, guys. We hope you come back again next year. Hope you're ready because it's going to be even more challenging.
If we luck out, it's going to be wet this year.
I hope
like it was
the rain
supposed to
down
be
like
last year. So.
a day before.
I also want to add that they made it further on the trail than all the jokers that stayed home.
That's true.
It's true. Like
Very
I said, we love to see somebody try to take a bike where it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
So last and certainly not least is my favorite segment of the whole show, Had to Lay Her Down.
Did you run into some clippings? Did Barb take the kids? Well, Hoss, maybe you had to lay her down.
Tonight's Had to Lay Her Down is brought to us by 6Sebi on Instagram. Make sure you give those guys a follow. And Trevor, you sent this to me here earlier in the week, and this is what we like to refer to as some air clippings. We like new style clippings every time we do the show, right? So air clippings is
We're slowly covering all states of matter.
I think we're at that point where we might have to dig up Einstein and find some new type of clippings. So let's play out. What you don't, if you didn't pay attention to see that, the guy falling off of the parachute also made the guy on the four-wheeler crash. Watch, they flip the four-wheeler.
I'd like to state the guy on the four-wheeler also hit a dog.
Oh, yeah. You can't see that
So
on it,
it's,
So air clippings, dog clippings, four-wheeler clippings.
nobody got away from that one unscathed except the spectators.
Is that a casting call for like Jackass 5 or what?
Might have been. Might have been. Those guys got to be dead by now.
I don't know. The crazy thing to me is like I could see somebody after a couple beers proposing the idea of doing that, but to get enough guys together and the equipment and everything to actually get out and do it, that
You know that started out as, it'd be cool if we did this. My uncle's got a 250EX quad laying in his garage he's not using. Hey, my Aunt Mary used to fly airplanes. She's got a parachute. Well, hell, we got this put together. We can do this right now. Let's go get it done. Wow, it'd be fantastic. Drew, you have anything else, any questions for us or anything else you'd like to plug before we sign off this evening?
No, I just, as usual, I just want folks to get out and ride. And when it comes to the adventure community, I think there's a lot of people on the periphery that are worried about gear and bike and all that stuff. But I tell people, like, a Triumph Scrambler has done all kinds of stuff. Yep. You can find any barbershop hipster bike and go out and ride adventure and have a good time. That's
something I've said in the past. And the amount of time most people waste watching several hours, days, etc., of YouTube footage and trying to figure out what the perfect starter bike is. You could have already just bought a bike and started learning and then adapted from there.
Yeah, a cheap used one is a way better choice than a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, because realistically, you're gonna beat it, and it's gonna beat you when you first start learning to ride. So
find those 50, 60-year-old racers that bought a 250L and can't wait to get rid of it. It's your deal.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Drew, we appreciate you coming on here tonight and sharing your story with us and your insight and your time. It's greatly appreciated. Like we said, you can find him on Spotify and your website. What was the website URL one more time?
Moto Adventurer, all one word.com.
Awesome. Again, we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Thanks for the comments and the likes and subs. We'll be back hopefully in a couple of weeks with some other random new topic or interview. And as always, we'll catch you next time on Tallboys
and Trackmasters. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. You guys have a good night.